You're listening to the GeekCast Radio Network of podcasts.
Cliff Jumper, commence countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, ToyCast, with your hosts, TFT1 Mike and Kevin Optimus Solo Thompson.
Hello and welcome to the 82nd episode of ToyCast. I'm your host, TFT1 Mike, and joining me for the first time in, I think it's over 40, 50 episodes. I think the last time you were on the show was episode 38, where you were talking about Perceptor, is Kevin Optimus Solo Thompson.
Hello. It's like a Back to the Future moment here I'm having.
What?
I'll explain that later. I'll explain that off air.
Why?
No, I'm just kidding.
No, say it.
No, it won't make any sense on the record. But yes, it's been a long time since I've been on ToyCast.
Yeah. So this episode kind of starts our themed episodes of the 80s. And I've had themes on here before, but the 80s, specifically the 80s episodes of ToyCast, most of the episodes will be geared towards one toy franchise. Episode 82 is going to be geared towards G.I. Joe. It was a toss-up between G.I. Joe and He-Man. He-Man will be episode 83 because that's the year the cartoon came out, even though the toys got released in 82. So, yeah, G.I. Joe.
Yes, good stuff. I love G.I. Joes. G.I. Joes they had to be one of my first. I had He-Man toys, G.I. Joe toys, and Transformer toys all about the same time. Those are kind of like three of the first toys that I really remember having. And I love G.I. Joe toys. I didn't have as many as I wanted to, but I have one of the best. My biggest childhood playing with like friends and toys memory involves G.I. Joe because I had some G.I. Joes. I had one of my friends growing up lived 2 houses down from me, and he had some. But then we knew this other guy. He never was really a good friend, but he was, we hung out with him sometimes. He lived about, 4 or 5 blocks away. He literally had like almost every G.I. Joe ever. As far as, and I'm talking about the 1980, the Real American Hero line, the 3.75-inch ones. Yeah, he had just about every single one. Well, one day we got the grand idea because my friend that lived two houses down had a fairly big front yard with a bunch of trees and whatnot. I brought all mine. The dude that had a million of them brought all his. And, of course, the friend that his house was at brought all his. And we had them all out in the yard. So we had probably over, I'm guessing over 200 G.I. Joe figures. Cobra, G.I. Joe, we had the vehicles, we had parachute guys hanging from trees, we had other guys in the bushes. Like, his whole yard became a G.I. Joe playset. And it has to be the biggest day of playing with toys I ever remember. Because usually it's just me and a couple of guys like inside somewhere, or me and one of my friends, or me by myself with my toys. But this was like 3 of us with over 200 toys spread out across the entire yard. Now, granted, the collector and everybody is like, "Oh, not good."
Well, let's be honest, though. Hold on. Let's be honest. In 1982 or 1983, whenever you played with these things, let's be honest. Us as kids, we were not out to collect toys. Right. We're out to play with our toys because we're friggin' kids. I have a question for you about this large display.
I wish I would have had a picture of it.
Well, that's not what I was going to ask you. This, and I know you can't go back in time and change this, but this large display of every you guys coming together cannot be complete unless one of you had the aircraft carrier.
I can't remember if the other guy did or not. He had so much crap that I didn't have.
The aircraft carrier is easily the best.
Yeah, I don't think we had that in the group. But
Well, you remember the aircraft carrier?
oh yeah, it's huge, and it had like
It's like 7 feet long.
yeah, we didn't have that there. We didn't have it there. We had quite a few vehicles, and I think we had just about every main character like represented. And yes, there was quite a few characters that got a little dirty. I'm sure that there was a couple that may have gotten broken over the course of the day. And I'm very convinced that not everybody went home with the same toys that they came to the day with. I'm pretty sure one or two figures somehow got mixed and matched into other people's collections.
It's kind of like a book swap.
Yeah, an unintentional swap where all of a sudden, like, weeks or months later, you're like, where did that figure go? And like, I guess
Where did that figure come from? I don't remember having him.
I do remember, though, being nervous while we were playing with all these that, where's my guy, or make sure mine aren't getting broken, or I got to keep my eyes on which ones are mine so I go home with them, and I was very nervous about it, but it was just very fun. Like, I just remember having them hanging from trees and bushes and, under rocks or on rocks or, fighting this guy and that guy, and it was just... I don't even know if the other two guys would remember this day, but I never had that many toys with that many friends together in that big of a place outside. Like, the closest I can come is that same friend that lived 2 houses down. There was a couple times where we had all of our Transformers together in one of our basements, but it can't really compare to how many different G.I. Joe figures and it being outside. It's just a great memory I have.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I had, for my general memories, I mean, it all basically revolves around those 3-inch figures. My brother, who I've mentioned a couple different times on other podcasts, he's about 10 years older than me. So he had some of the original 12-inch 70s figures. And I remember playing with them some, but I wasn't allowed to play with them too much. And he still has those. And I remember getting some 12-inch ones of the newer lines eventually, but my main memories are with those 3-inch figures from the 80s.
Oh, yeah. Very much so. I probably shouldn't be on this episode of ToyCast because, honestly, the only thing resembling any kind of army people I ever had was the little army men, kind of like from Toy Story.
Yeah, I can remember. I had a bunch of those too.
I do not remember having any G.I. Joes. I honestly don't. I don't know if it was something that my mom said, well, you can only collect 1 to 2. I know she let me have multiple toy collections, but I think there was like a limit at like maybe 6 toy collections, because I know I had several different Transformers. I had a bunch. The He-Man story, we'll get to that next time. But I had everything He-Man. I had Voltron toys. I had Mask toys. I had Thundercats. I had Silverhawk. I had all the Silverhawks. It's another story for another episode. Anyways, it's funny. Dad had to sell all the damn He-Man toys, but he couldn't sell those craptacular Silverhawks toys. Fucking right. Anyways, so
you said that.
So I had multiple collections. I don't know if it was something that I wasn't interested in for G.I. Joe. I remember watching the Real American Hero cartoon. I don't remember watching it as much as Transformers, but I do remember watching it. Mm-hmm. But I don't ever remember having G.I. Joes.
I didn't have as many as like some of my friends did, but I had quite a few. I had the oh shoot, I'm forgetting the name now, but not Snowjob, but one of those guys came with like a tiger print, like orange and black, like this vehicle. And I had that vehicle. I had like one of the purple Cobra planes, purplish blue planes, And that's one thing that I liked about the G.I. Joe franchise is I loved their vehicles. Because usually multiple G.I. Joes could sit in them and whatnot. It's something that I wasn't getting necessarily from Transformers because they were the vehicles and the robots obviously are all in one. And it's something that He-Man, you had the vehicles, but they were like these cool like alien, not alien type, but like these mythical type vehicle.
Right, yeah.
Whereas G.I. Joe, you got to have some straight up army vehicles. You had planes, you had these like cool army cars, and I really liked that. Yeah, Jeeps and all that kind of stuff, and I just thought it was really cool.
You had every kind of vehicle imaginable to military. You had, like you said, planes, Jeeps. I'm sure there was boats at some
there was.
point. I mean, obviously the aircraft carrier, but I mean, the aircraft carrier is something completely by itself as far as a vehicle. I mean, the aircraft carrier technically could be a play set because you could put, I remember seeing it on TV somewhere. Someone put like over 1,000 Joes on the aircraft carrier. This thing is 7 feet long. I'll have to find a picture of it somewhere.
Yeah. And they ranged from something that big to they had vehicles just for one person. Yep. But I really liked the vehicles that multiple people could be involved in. I even had this one, I don't even know, it was like for a swamp area, and it was like a gray, basically it looked like this gray like octagon type thing, and I think 3 Cobra guys basically could sit in it, and they each had their own little gun pointing out, and it came with what's his name? The guy had like a purple and black suit with like a thing over his eye, and he was super cool. But just stuff like that where multiple figures could fit in the same thing, I really enjoyed.
That thing actually reminds me of Bobby Boucher's fan boat he rode into the stadium.
Oh God! Now I'm gonna go absolutely nuts until I figure out what that guy's name is. So think about it for a second here. And I still have this guy, but this is a sad story. G.I. Joe, some of mine I lost, and I didn't lose any of the G.I. Joes in the garage sales, but I still have most of them in a Rubbermaid container downstairs somewhere. But I opened it the other day because I was looking for some old Silverhawks figures to annoy you with. And I was looking through, and I was going through some of the other toys in there. And apparently somewhere in the movement, because they were in a container that I didn't transfer with as much care as my Transformers and Star Wars collection. Mm-hmm. My Transformers and Star Wars collections are all in sealed bags or boxes and cases within Rubbermaid containers, so there's no way that any of them can get harmed.
Right.
And then I kind of had some of the miscellaneous toys just kind of loose in a Rubbermaid container. I don't know what happened, but the guy that I'm talking about, his limbs are no longer connected to his body. I don't know what happened in the transfer. I don't know if it was just so old that something snapped inside, but he literally has a body with his head on it, and then arms and legs are separate. And that is one thing that could happen to your G.I. Joe toys if you weren't careful with them.
Right.
They broke a lot. I mean, they did not break as easy as Transformers. I'm not going to say that, because Transformers broke easier than any other toy because people were usually too careless with them as far as the transformation process, and they're die cast. So it was very easy to break Transformers if you weren't careful with them. But G.I. Joes have to be like a close second with as far as like that type of figure, because those arms and those legs were liable to be very loose at some points.
Die-cast construction, it's a lost art.
I know, it's a sad lost art, because you actually had to know your toys. You had to have a relationship with your toys, and to the point where you knew how every little part of them moved so that you would not break them, and you could not let your friends touch them if they did not respect them. Now,
recently, and I've said this before on some of the other shows in the recent weeks and months, I have been hooked on the History Channel show Pawn Stars. And, you might think, well...
I love that show.
Oh, huh?
I love that show.
That show's awesome. Well, a lot of people think, well, why is something called Pawn Stars on the History Channel? Well, because you have people who go to, like, estate sales and stuff, where they've had stuff in their basements or attics for, years on end. Like, there's... they bring in old like Civil War guns, and they bring in stuff like.
There's a lot of history that they give to it.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of history in that show. Yes, it's just somebody going into a pawn shop, but I mean, it shows more of the buying end of pawn dealers than it does the seller's end, because
and they have shown some cool Transformers, and like you were saying off air, I think it was off air, some G.I. Joe stuff. They've shown both things on that show.
Well, that's what I was going to get to, because a lot of us know about the 1970s 12-inch figures, but G.I. Joe, Hasbro originated it in 1964. Mm-hmm. And on one of the more recent episodes of Pawn Stars, this lady brought in her 1964 G.I. Joe nurse doll. It was the only girl G.I. Joe they ever made. I mean, in the original line, up until like they brought in like the G.I. Janes later in the 90s.
Right.
And unfortunately, it wasn't like fully complete. There was some problems with it, so he was only willing to like give her like I don't know $800 or something for it. I don't know.
Still.
And you know,
The Transformers, the one that they showed, that it was so expensive that they didn't even offer anything.
well, he couldn't. Well, he was going to offer him 15,000, but the guy just couldn't take it. The guy wanted 20,000. And the problem with that collection on Pawn Stars, and we're kind of getting off the G.I. Joe topic, but the problem with that collection on Pawn Stars, he had multiples of it.
Yeah, he did.
He had multiples of Power Master Prime. He had multiples of Devastator, multiples of Trypticon. So it wasn't just like collecting the 1984 line, 85 line, 86 line, 87, just one of
Right.
each line. He had multiples of each line. So that's why it made it a little bit more valuable, but it's having multiples.
Right.
It's like-
No, I'm with you on that one.
So, but anyway,
Still trying to think of the damn name of that guy.
I'm sorry, but
Oh, Voltar. It had to be Voltar.
okay, Voltar. Okay, that
I
works.
think that's what his name was. Anyways, I can move on now.
I am sorry. Anything over 10 inches is a doll to me. So the 12-inch G.I. Joe original line, they were dolls. They were not
cool dolls at the time, though. Because
they
you
were
would
not
have-
action figures.
No, they weren't necessarily action figures, in my opinion. But for what kids had at that time to play with, you know, that was pretty cool. It was pretty cool toys.
Right. yeah.
Voltar. I love Voltar. I'm sorry. I wish Voltar hadn't died such a brutal death.
Okay then.
He was cool. He was bad.
Obsessed much.
Anyways, I'm gonna go put him back together. I'm just kidding.
No.
No, and he was cool also because I had a set of puzzles when I was a kid. A set of six G.I. Joe puzzles, and you could take the edges off and combine them into a massive puzzle. And one of them had a big face of Voltar on it, and it was very cool. But I still have those puzzles, by the way. I'm sorry, I've gone off track. I do love though. This is kind of getting a little bit ahead, but he brought up the 12 inches from the 60s and 70s, and I've seen like 4 of them of that were my brothers, and you know they're all right, they're cool and whatnot, but they seem so generic because they really don't have much of a personality, as much as an action figure can have a personality, but they don't. But I was a fan at the time of the 12-inch ones when they were released as part of the later line in the 90s, whatever it was, the 98 or 94. I just looked it up earlier and I can't freaking remember now.
The Real American Hero Collection, TRU exclusives, 97, 98.
Yeah, yep. I remember those, and I was a big fan of those at the time. Or actually, it was the 92 to 94, the Hall of Fame 12-inch
Yeah.
shirts. And I had Destro and Cobra Commander and Duke and Grunt, and they were very cool because they came with the dog tags, and they came with these weapons that made sounds and lit up, but they had their own little display stand that they could sit on. And they're really cool. I have those in the basement as well. But they were cool because I'm big on the display, and they looked really nice displayed because of the stand and because they were so big. And they had a lot of articulation.
Yeah.
For a figure that was coming out in 92 to 94, they had more articulation than most things had in that time period. You know, articulation seems to be something that's come leaps and bounds since the 90s. But they were pretty much ahead of their time, I think, with the articulation of a big 12-inch figure.
Oh, I'm sure they were.
Yeah, but those are the main ones I remember as far as the 12-inch ones. They were way better than the 1960s or the 19 whatever years it was.
Yeah.
But nothing can quite compete. Like you said, an action figure is those small, 3.75 inch, same size as the Star Wars figures. Although I do find it interesting that, kind of going off topic a little bit, but at the different sizes that different action figures have been released, even just in the 80s. Because you had stuff really tiny like the Mask figures. Then you had your Star Wars and G.I. Joe with about the 3.75 inch ones. And then it just goes all across the board. Like, Thundercats were huge.
Yes, they were.
He-Man were pretty big. Turtles were kind of a medium size. You know, Transformers are everywhere because they had so many different types.
Yeah.
But there's no consistent sizing really. As
No.
you see it a lot more nowadays. Nowadays, when you have like when they make action figures for like the latest movie that came out, like whether it's like whatever the new Star Trek movie or the newest Terminator movie or like Iron Man or whatever it is, they're all the same size as the G.I. Joe Star Wars figures almost.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing is today that they're all in line with the same sizes. So
yeah,
like,
you don't see it like back in the 80s when you'd get like one toy was one size, one toy was another size. Now it seems like it's pretty standard.
Well, and the other thing about today is you have 3 or 4 different size classes in a line.
Yeah.
So, like, say you take
well, for Transformers.
Well, for example, Marvel action figures. You have Marvel Legends, which are, I believe, 3 3/4 inch figures, and then you have the 6-inch figures. And then you have, say, a 7-inch figure. So, I mean, yes, there are different sizes, but for the most,
it seems like all of them have the 3 3/4 size.
Yeah.
It seems like, and it makes it nice for displaying purposes, and as far as if people are buying like stands or cases or different stuff like that, it's cool. But it's just I just find it funny that the 12-inch figure just really didn't last or didn't stick around as long, whereas this 3 3/4 figure that came out, it's really stood the test of time and become everybody's, I guess, favorite size for a lot of collectors.
Most of us, obviously, I can't speak for all collectors because I don't know all the collectors, but I mean, most collectors in general like a range, and of course it depends on the line and it depends on the brand, but range from 3 3/4 to about 7 inches, depending. Like, I know the DC Universe Justice League figures are mostly 3 3/4. However, Lobo is the fan collection Lobo. He is 7 inches. He's slightly bigger.
Yeah.
The Masters, the Universe Classics, they're all 7 inches, with the exception of like Orko. But Orko comes with a stand, so technically he is 7 inches with the stand, but without the stand, obviously he's about 3 inches.
Yeah. For me, like just like displaying wise, like in my room when I was younger or growing up, it was easy for me to justify the G.I. Joe and the Star Wars collections because they each had the 3 3/4 and they each had the 12-inch figures. So it made it easy for me to display them in my room as far as like, shelf spacing and stuff like that. So I really kind of enjoyed those two sizes.
I would love to see fully articulated action figures at a 12-inch scale. I honestly don't, a 7-inch Masters of the Universe, and I know we're talking about G.I. Joe here, but I mean, 7-inch Masters of the Universe, that's kind of pushing it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
There's a couple of them that are, 8 inches or 9 inches, but it would be awesome. I mean, especially with as far as G.I. Joe line has come today, it would be awesome to get actual 12-inch action figures and not dolls.
No, yeah, I agree with you. I don't like the doll aspect except for display purposes and stuff like that. As far as some of them, like I like some of the 12-inch Joes. I like some of the 12-inch Star Wars guys. They're kind of cool, but if I had my choice, I would much rather have the 3 3/4 inch.
Yeah.
So after... Oh, go ahead.
Well, I don't really mind the 6-inch figures either, because those are still...
Yeah, that's true.
Kind of cool. So, I mean, those are still, fairly, posable, playable, all that stuff.
Right. So as far as the 3 3/4 inches, we had the Real American Hero from 82 to basically 94. It was a long-lasting toy line, and there's tons and tons of Joes in that line, and that's the one that most diehard Joe fans are most probably familiar with. But since then, we've had quite a few as far as exclusives that have come out or like commemorative stuff that's come out. You had a couple different Real American Hero collections. You had some G.I. Joe versus Cobra in the early 2000s. And then the one that I've really liked was the 25th anniversary collection. I don't have any of them because, as a collector that's not rich, I've always had to choose my battles as far as which lines I could collect. And usually Star Wars and Transformers wins out if there's something on the shelves of those two franchises, which there always is for Star Wars. But the 25th anniversary, I think, looks really cool as far as the G.I. Joe. I know it's not really out there anymore because the movies came out and kind of took over like movies are bitches for doing. I hate it when movies come out like that and destroy the current line. Anyway.
Yeah.
But the 25th anniversary had some real cool Destros, and I remember seeing some on the shelves with silver masks, some with gold masks, some with different color masks. So that was cool. They did a good job of making them look as much like the old one to kind of respect the original figures, but to upgrade them like we've seen with the Masters of the Universe classics, like we've seen with the Transformers classics, where there's enough of the old stuff that fans aren't going to be upset, but it's upgraded to a point where it's better. And I do have to bring up one of my favorite 25th anniversary G.I. Joe figures. When they decided to put out a 25th anniversary G.I. Joe figure named Specialist Tracker, who was basically Matt Tracker from Mask. I know we've talked about this when we did the ToonCast Mask episode.
Fuck you!
No, Matt Tracker was awesome. He looks awesome. I actually still want to go buy the 25th anniversary G.I. Joe Matt Tracker one because I think it's awesome that they mixed him in there.
No.
I know you don't agree, but I love it. I wish they would have mixed more stuff in there.
No.
Awesome. People call into the voicemail line.
No.
Tell us your opinion of Mask.
No.
No, I said give us your opinion, your honest opinion. People that are listening, tell us what you think of a line like G.I. Joe's. And some people are going to hate it, but I have a feeling some people might like it. But give us your opinion of putting a figure from a completely different line, Mask in this case, into the 25th anniversary G.I. Joe line. I want to hear people's opinions.
It shouldn't have been done.
That's your opinion.
I just sent you a link to muglab.com with the G.I. Joe Mighty Mugs. This is honestly the closest I come to G.I. Joe figures.
Yeah, and I know you're a huge Mighty Mugs fan, and I like the looks of them. It's just not anything I've been able to get into, but I think they're pretty cool looking.
Well, the best one easily is Destro.
Yeah.
Because his head is all mirrorish chrome looking. I mean, I can see my reflection in his head.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. But yeah, the G.I. Joe Mighty Mugs, unfortunately, Wave 3 got canceled, and unfortunately, I don't think Hasbro is making any more Mighty Mugs at all anymore, which kind of sucks, except like maybe convention-exclusive stuff, which obviously SDCC only comes once a year, unfortunately.
Yeah. But so basically, since the 25th anniversary, we've just had the movie lines, The Rise of Cobra, and now the Pursuit of Cobra. But there is still some it seems like there's some classics that you can still find on the shelves here and there, which are kind of cool when you come across them. They're not really like the active lines, but you can still find them every once in a while.
Oh yeah.
And of course, there was Sigma 6 figures, which no, thank you. I'm surprised. I'm assuming that there's never been Resolute figures.
I think they're making them.
Oh, I was going to say, those would be some kick-ass figures.
I think they are. Let's see. Classics, Super Joe, short-lived line, Sigma 6. It doesn't say anything about Resolute, but I could have sworn that they were going to be making some.
Oh, that would be cool because the Resolute are some of the best G.I. Joe designs ever, as far as the character look and like the design of them, and that would be really cool to see those. But especially the Cobra Commander in the Resolute line, to see him. But so far, if you're going to the store, you're only going to be able to find the current movie lines, which I'm not a big fan.
Yeah.
To me, it'll always either be it always has to be somewhat an homage to the original 80, not the original 12-inch ones, but the original 3 3/4 figures. There has to be something that reminds me of them. It can't be movie lines. So hopefully the classic collection or some type of like 30th anniversary will be coming out here eventually, and we can just let those take over again. The 30th anniversary actually should be 2012 then. So
yeah,
hopefully in 2 years we got some 30th anniversary collection.
Oh, I'm sure we will.
And then the movie figures can go away. And I like the G.I. Joe movie. I'm not trying to say I don't like the G.I. Joe movie. I like the G.I. Joe movie, but I hate it when the movie figures take over and the old lines get shut out.
Yeah, that is kind of crappy.
Yeah.
So I think that's it.
We very quickly went through a few decades of G.I. Joe figures.
And I know we're going to get shit for this episode because we didn't include, say, Michael Wilson. Even though Michael doesn't really collect G.I. Joes, he knows a lot about it. Or, say, Steve Megatron, which, it's Well,
It is what it is.
Well, I was going to say, it's 1 a.m. that we're recording this, and Steve should have been online at some point, but he wasn't. But anyway, so yeah.
But I think they're cool. Like I said, the main reason I like the G.I. Joe figures is because of the militaristic vehicles, and just to connect the characters that you wanted from the cartoon series. It wasn't like the G.I. Joe figures did a lot compared to, like, let's say the Masters of the Universe figures with all their gimmicks, the Transformers figures which you could transform. You know, G.I. Joe, like I have said different times, to me they kind of remind me of the Turtles, where there wasn't a lot of gimmicks, there wasn't a lot of stuff you could do with them. It was basically up to you and your imagination. But that's not to take it away, because G.I. Joe, the franchise, has so many characters. So it was always fun to try to, get your favorite character and try to line them up. And, like I said, the 25th anniversary was very cool. So I'm looking forward to some 30th anniversary stuff. And maybe by that point I'll have some extra money. I could actually buy a couple.
Yes. So thank you for joining us here on ToyCast. There are several ways to get in contact with us or leave feedback for the show. Visit the website, geekcastradio.com. You can comment on each episode post. Leave the show's feedback in iTunes. Please do this. Follow us on Twitter. TFToycast is the show Twitter. Mine is TFG and Mike. What is your Twitter?
Boss K-Dog.
Become a fan on Facebook. It's facebook.com/GeekCastRadio Network. Call the voicemail line. Tell us to show you a message for and your name. 502-526-5821. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Tooncast. Yikes. Shit. We hope you enjoyed this episode of ToyCast and wish you'll join us next time. For now, I am TFG1 Mike with
Optimus Solo. I almost forgot my name.
Thank you for listening. Until next time. Wow, we really fucked that up.